Mark my words, if there is any HDR game which will win my HDR Game of the Year 2025 content, then it is Dying Like the Beast, because this is absolutely mind-blowing. And why is this the case? First of all, we have fantastic looking specular highlights, and second of all, and that's even more important, we have, if needed, a spot on HDR black level floor with zero HDR black level rays. In combination, specular highlights and black level floor, that means we have a perfect contrast, and this is so important. This game looks absolutely stunning with HDR enabled. And that's why this game is easily one of the, maybe even the best HDR game I have ever seen. Dying Like the Beast is one of the reasons why you should get a proper HDR screen. Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. So before we start, I have to say thank you very much, Rossboss6, one of my YouTube subscribers. He actually bought me this game on Steam, the deluxe version even. Thank you very much, because without him this video would not happening. So again, thank you so much, because without you I would miss out this great HDR implementation. So again, thank you very much. And now let's talk about now please like, share and subscribe. And now let's talk about this absolute mind-blowing HDR implementation. So let's take a closer look again on the great HDR image, what you get when you play this game on a fantastic or decent HDR screen like I have the LG G4. And this is not even the latest TV, the latest HDR TV. If you have the LG G5 or even the latest QD OLED TV from Samsung, I can just imagine how great this game looks on those TVs. Because I mentioned this already, we have absolute stunning specular highlights, and even more important is the HDR black level floor, which is, even in situations like that, still absolutely fantastic. That means the contrast right now, as you can see, hopefully on your HDR screen, is absolutely stunning. I don't know even other words. Stunning, awesome, mind-blowing, absolutely crazy. This game, again, is in my opinion Game of the Year for HDR implementation. And this game will not just win because of the absolute fantastic HDR implementation, it will also win in the category Best HDR Calibration Screen, what I have seen so far. But the question of course is, what makes this HDR calibration screen so perfect? And it's very simple to explain, because it's just working. And you know, hopefully, my golden rule: never trust an HDR calibration screen. In this case, it doesn't count. It's not valid, because this screen is exactly doing what it is supposed to do. Because every single setting on the HDR calibration screen is reacting and showing the correct result on this HDR calibration screen, and of course also in the game. And the best thing is, we can toggle between day, morning and night. So that means you can use this HDR calibration screen to set up your picture in the most perfect way. You can even turn off the user interface and still adjust settings if you like, to get really the best result. But now of course the question is, what are the best settings for your TV screen or monitor? So let's have a closer look on the settings what we have in the game. And we're starting with the first one, the HDR maximum luminance setting. And this setting is very simple, because this setting is spot on. That means if you have an LG G4, as I do, with a maximum peak brightness capability of 1500 nits, you set this to 1500 nits and you get 1500 nits. If you have the LG ZX, for an example, you set this to 800 nits or 850 nits and you get 800 or 850 nits. Have a closer look on this table. I listed a couple of TVs and monitors, and maybe you're lucky and your TV is on this list and you can just follow my advice. The next setting what we have in this game is the HDR minimum luminance slider, and my recommendation for this setting is very simple: do not touch it. Because as soon you increase this setting from 0.000 to just 0.001, you increase the HDR black level floor. I have just for fun set this to the absolute maximum, which by the way is 1 nit. And as you can see, we're getting an HDR black level raise of exactly 1 nit. But no one wants to have any HDR black level raise because we like to keep the best contrast. That means, again, do not touch this setting. And the next setting what we have in this game is the scene brightness slider. And this setting is a little bit more complicated because, first of all, it is changing the average picture brightness in this game, but it is also unfortunately affecting the HDR black level floor. Because as soon you increase this value, you will lift up the HDR black level floor slightly, just slightly. It's not a big deal, but I'm just mentioning this. And as soon you decrease this value, you get in certain situations a slightly, very slightly better HDR black level floor. So again, this setting is very hard to recommend because I found on my LG G4 with HGIG enabled, the standard factory setting 1.35 actually sometimes too bright, okay? So I turned it down a little bit to 1.2, something like that, maybe even 1.0 sometimes because it's just very, very bright. But it really depends on your screen, TV or monitor, what you're using, and if you prefer HGIG or dynamic tone mapping on. My only recommendation is stay between 0.5 and maximum 1.6 because below 0.5 you will lose maximum peak brightness and specular highlights, and above 1.6 you will start clip details in specular highlights. That's my only recommendation for the scene brightness setting. And then we have a setting called shadows, and this setting can give you more or less details in shadows. So keep in mind that if you increase or decrease this setting, you will also affect the HDR black level floor. The setting, the standard factory setting 0.45 is in my opinion pretty good. But if you have the feeling shadows are too bright, decrease this setting slightly. If you have the feeling the shadows are not bright enough, increase this setting slightly. But I have to say, I found 0.45 perfectly tuned in for my LG G4. So my recommendation is actually do not touch this setting. And last but not least, we have the user interface brightness setting, and this setting is purely for user interface symbols, HUD symbols on your screen. So feel free to adjust or set this value up as you like it. And I know the question will always come up, HGIG or dynamic tone mapping on, and in this case it's very simple. Use HGIG because this game has just such a fantastic average picture brightness or paper white brightness, or just in general such a great HDR implementation. There is no need, at least not on my LG G4, there's no need for dynamic tone mapping on. And the point is actually that HGIG delivers you a much more accurate HDR presentation. There is no doubt about that, okay? Dynamic tone mapping on will just clip details, will over brighten the picture in very dark environments, and so on and so on. So again, if you can, and that's my recommendation, use HGIG. Okay, my friends, so that's it for this video, and I hope I did not forget anything, and I'm still shocked. I'm absolutely shocked still that we have, I mean, this must be a bug anyway. Something is wrong with this game because even you're not changing any settings in this game. And I even think now that the game actually recognized that I have a 1500 nits TV. Maybe it's taking this information from the HDR calibration screen in Windows 11. So maybe, but there's apart from the HDR maximum luminance slider, nothing to do for you. Okay, maybe the scene brightness is a little bit too bright. But maybe not, okay? Maybe not, because actually when I think about that, when you go outside and you have a very bright sunny day, the first thing what is happening, it's very bright outside, and it's exactly as in the game, okay? It's very over brightened things, okay? Which is fantastic, but sometimes I found it's a little bit too much, so I tuned it down a little bit, but hey, it's not needed to do anything. I mean, the rest, I don't know why they put in the shadows setting. I don't know why they put the HDR minimum luminance slider in, because you don't need those settings. But don't get me wrong, we like to have settings like that which are working spot on. And that's the point. This HDR implementation is just spot on, okay? The HDR calibration screen is wow. One of the first screens, I think, where I have seen that everything is working out of the box. So literally, you can just use this screen, set up your monitor TV, and that's it, because it's exactly the same on the screen, on the calibration screen, and in the game. And this is sometimes not the case. We have seen this in so many games, you know what I mean? So Gears 5 is also an example. The HDR calibration screen, which is good, but it's not telling the truth, okay? So that's unfortunately the case. Here, wow, I don't know. I'm still shocked. I mean, I hope they're fixing this because we don't want to have a perfect HDR implementation, okay? We don't want this. We like to have fixes, okay? We like to have that we have to mod things. I'm just kidding, okay? That's exactly what we like to have. So other AAA producer developers, Silent Hill F developers, just take notes here, okay? This is how you do HDR. This is how you do HDR. And I have to make a big confession. I did not even try SDR. I did not even record any SDR material, which I usually do to compare, because on my TV here, there's no need, there's no point to use SDR. Not a single point if you have a proper HDR screen. Don't tell me you prefer SDR over HDR in this game. And I even haven't seen the HDR presentation because, again, the HDR implementation here is just absolutely spot on. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Again, thank you very much for sponsoring this video, Rospo6. I highly appreciate this. Yeah, that's it. That's it from my end. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.